Well, actually, I think we might sort of kick off because, of course, we've got an exciting presenter for ourselves this evening. So, welcome everybody to Membership Voice. I'm Elaine Mead, and I'm actually tonight's guest host for this evening's webinar. And a special welcome to tonight's presenter, District 9465 Membership Chair, member of Rotary E-Club of Western Australia, and Membership Voice founder, Kero O'Shea. So, Kero, hi.
Hi, Elaine. How are you going?
How does it feel to be on the other side, shoes on the other foot?
I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm going to cope with this. I'm a past membership chair, by the way. They kicked me out about 3 or 4 years ago.
Did they? Oh, that was a bit of an oversight. So just whilst we're waiting for people to come on board, I'll just say e nā mana e nā reo, e nā hao e whā, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui o Rotary, and he ke hatu katoa tātou mō a tata, mara ia mahi Rotary hoki. Me whakahika o tātou wārua ki anito, mihi rao ki a tātou katoa. So basically, all authorities, all voices, people of the four winds, welcome to this Rotary greeting. And we're all leaders in our own right, in our communities, in our network, and in Rotary. So let us all ignite our spirits for success. And greetings to you all. So now for tonight's presentation. Why is your club shrinking? Key lessons from the Membership Voice Library that will put your club back on the path to growth in 2022-23 if you take action. So, Kero, over to you.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you for being our guest host tonight. Very important, as you did, to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm presenting the webinar presentation tonight, and that's to acknowledge the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting tonight's webinar. I acknowledge the strength of their continuing culture and offer my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and I'm looking forward to working as a volunteer on Reconciliation Week because I believe it's such an important process for us all. Okay, lessons from the Membership Voice Library. Now, the Membership Voice Library is a growing library made up of evidence-based stories from successful Rotary clubs. But just a little bit about me, Elaine's covered pretty much all of that. The only thing I would add to it is that I'm also a member of the District 9455 membership team this year, and I'm thoroughly enjoying that. But Membership Voice, it's a Zone 8 club building webinar program. It serves Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. It's all about growing and strengthening Rotary, and it's doing that by sharing the stories of the hundreds of successful Rotary clubs and Rotaract clubs in Zone 8. So why do we do that? Well, typically, even though our zone has reported membership declining over the years, looking at the successful clubs I'm talking about, their membership is typically up 10 to 50%. Over the period that we've looked at those clubs. And a key element in that for most of them is that modernisation has been a key part of that. Now, modernisation is different things to different clubs. But before we go any further, you don't have to do anything as a result of listening to tonight's presentation. But if you don't do anything, probably nothing will change. But that's your choice. Okay, by definition of a modern Rotary club, the things that I'm going to look at tonight: leadership and pride in the club. Expressing leadership is a critical thing. Being relevant to the community you serve, which may be a cause, and showing how much they need you. Being attractive along the way. A club culture that values inclusivity in its broadest sense and good relationships, that invests in its members as inclusive. For some, some can get away with being exclusive, but there's a price to pay for that, and addresses the price of membership, which is something that our traditional values make a bit difficult. Okay, first thing, as our RI director, who's also an authority on volunteering, Jessie Harmon, said in February 22, we must put our members at the centre of the focus of our clubs. We need to understand each person's needs and expectations and deliver a Rotary or a Rotaract experience, depending on the club, which meets their need. We do those things and our clubs will succeed. But digging below the surface on that a bit, what do members want? We typically make assumptions about this, and I know that when Ballina and Richmond asked their members what they wanted, they identified relevant community service, fellowship and friendship, and personal development opportunities as being the key drivers there. Everyone's an individual, and if you're going to be a member-centric club, there's plenty of evidence that points to the fact that you need to talk to your members about anything you're going to do, but especially about what they need out of their Rotary or Rotaract experience. You make assumptions on their behalf, and that may be a precursor to them leaving. So talking to your members, understanding your members, listening to your members, probably most of all, really, really important. Okay, let's look at examples of what I'm talking about with this expression of pride. I haven't used Andy Rajapakse as an example here, although I could, because he is very much larger than life with that, and we all know how successful he and his predecessors have been in terms of promoting the passion of pride that goes with that sort of leadership. But so when I talk about leaders, I'm not just talking about presidents. Committee leaders, project leaders, anyone who's responsible for leading anything in Rotary has a game to play here, or has a part to play here, I mean, and that is, as depicted in this picture, Nick Lim talked about a planning session at REC and got everybody involved in it, in the action, and expressed his pride. Another one who's very, very good at this is Dave Harmon from Ballina and Richmond, an excellent communicator in sharing his pride in his club. And the second part of this is about having an attractive club, looking good, looking the part. But then we get to this word relevant. And for a club to be successful, that test of relevance goes two ways. The first way is in the direction of your club's members. The things that you do need to be relevant, to have meaning. Going back to the previous slide where we talked about relevant community service for club members, but it also needs to be relevant to your community. If you're doing things that you like to do, your members like to do, that's one part of it, good. But if things that you're doing are relevant to your community, if they have meaning out there, if the community has a perception that expanding those services will be good, then you're going to see the kind of response that Ballina and Richmond got when they listened to their communities about the dreadful impact of family and domestic violence, and they did things. They connected with their community. They didn't just throw money at the issue. Sometimes we tend to think that's the be-all and end-all, and making a donation will do the trick. As a general rule, all that demonstrates is that Rotary clubs and members are well off and have lots of money. It doesn't make us an attractive proposition to join for the community at large. What does make a difference is, as you see here, where the community was engaged in this project. New South Wales Police came on board and sort of partnership with the club, and they went from having 33 members to the current numbers, I think, of around 84. And of course, the spin-off benefit of that was when the Ballina area and surrounding districts were hit by those repetitive and terrible floods earlier this year. Ballina had a very strong Rotary club that had great connections with the community and had a satellite that I'm going to touch on later on that also came into the picture and put in some amazing community service. So They've passed the test of relevance multiple times. Your club can do that. You'll find that people are likely to put Rotary back on their order of priorities, and everyone's got time to do things that they prioritise. So you pass that test of relevance, you've got an opportunity to grow your club. Now, that is part of the framework, but it's important at times to just stand back and look at your Rotary club, because at the end of the day, whilst it might own a lot of staff and do a bunch of things, it's just a set of relationships. And checking on those relationships, finding out how things are going, being aware of that. We've got the stories from, and we have a number of stories that relate to each of these issues. But the one from East Maitland really comes to mind here, where a few years ago, a club of 32 members was contemplating handing in its charter because of the level of conflict in the club. And that's where it brings me to this point, where unresolved conflict, tension, conflict, confrontation and the like is an all part and parcel of an active organisation. Having courageous conversations about the things that you need to do is really, really important. But it's important too that those differences are worked through, that you don't leave unresolved conflict, because it will destroy your club. It's up there amongst the worst destroyers of Rotary clubs that we know of, but where conflict between members of the club, and it doesn't have to be major brawls and arguments and people yelling at one another, because as has been featured recently in our Rotary Learning Centre that I'm going to touch on later on, microaggression, where people sideline others, where they snub and intentional rudeness and the like, can create a level of hostility within a club that may not result in what we call it, my term, open warfare, but it will be in the long term as dangerous to your club as having brawls in the aisles. So yes, we have a wonderful webinar coming up on this from Bernie Legrand, the mediator from District 9560. I heard Bernie make a similar presentation in the 9560 membership series recently. She's really good at this, and I'm looking forward to Bernie talking to us in a couple of weeks. So if you've got issues with conflict that you can't quite sort out, come and listen in to Bernie. She can help you with that. The warfare and microaggressions and that part of it is at one end of the scale. But let's say that you don't have any obvious issues like that. The opportunity to improve the relationships in your club is still there. And if you do that, we have plenty of evidence that points to strong relationships in a club, as opposed to ordinary relationships, being a catalyst and a foundation for future growth, because people collaborate better, they want to work together, the participation in projects is better. And Ron Gibson made one of our first presentations on membership voice based on the concept of coffee with a Rotarian. Ron, being a professional networker, is very, very good at that. So the Ron Gibson presentation is certainly worth having a look at if you want to take the set of relationships which is your club from okay to even better. And in fact, dedicating some, if you like, some meeting time, foregoing some meeting time in favour of enabling people to meet at one-on-one and have coffee together. Good way to go. So coffee catch-ups build relationships. Certainly a great way of building foundations, our evidence has shown. Now, investing in your members and educating your members is absolutely key to retention. We heard that from past Governor Terry Daly when he was talking about the epic story of the rebound of Rockhampton Fitzroy Rotary Club from 2 members to 44, including 18 under 40. He made a number of important points. He said, Rotary Leadership Institute played a really important part in engaging, particularly the young people in that club, and using the online Rotary Learning Centre also played an important part. Campbelltown last week talked about, with their 84 members, their growth to 84 members, talked about their significant number of members under 30 and how important RLI was in the process of educating their entire member base, including those young members, and that and the Rotary Learning Centre in terms of enabling them to engage better with the opportunities that are available in Rotary, because Rotary is, after all, a movement made up of thousands of causes, and the multiple opportunities there for new people are just fantastic. Case in point, yesterday I went to an Anzac barbecue breakfast at Government House here in Perth, and I met a young person from a new member at, I think it was Harrison Rotary Club. I was having a chat with her, and she was in Rotary. She's just about to join Rotary, a past youth exchange member, very keen on getting involved in that. I just happened to meet the 9455 youth exchange secretary a little while later, so I introduced her to her. And that gives that young woman an opportunity to grow her passion for Rotary Youth Exchange by taking part in it. And that's, even just doing little things like that can make a difference. The Rotary Online Learning Centre is an absolute joy to use. There are lots of great courses here. There's even one on that microaggression topic that I talked about. There's lots of stuff to learn here. It's a very, very straightforward operation to use, and there is a lot to learn, so I recommend that. Now, I want to get to the question of value and pricing. This is an issue that it's probably been a sleeper in Rotary for a time, and we're getting a lot of evidence-based successful practice that's pointing to it being something that clubs really need to think about. It's obviously a decision for every club, an individual decision, because the cultures and circumstances are different. But I want to go back in a bit of history here. Once upon a time, say last century, let's say, exclusivity was our moat. We were the business networking operation globally. People wanted to connect with the movers and shakers in their community. They joined Rotary. Okay, Rotary grew rapidly, but around, I think it was 1985, it's something that we didn't sort of tend to notice at the time. I think that was when Business Networking International started, and other organisations that focused on professional networking and the like. And over the years, this has been something that has tended to slip away. Of course, when we were the movers and shakers, when people were queuing up to join Rotary to join that business networking thing, they were prepared to pay for the privilege. So we've traditionally had this pride in members covering our overhead costs, paying for the privilege of being in Rotary. But times have changed. Times have changed. I mean, that's our reality these days. But I put it to you that the way we think about membership fees hasn't changed, and maybe it needs to. Maybe it needs to pretty quickly. We still charge as though we're that exclusive organisation that wants to be inclusive, that has the moat. The moat's gone now. But we say we want to be inclusive. We need to be inclusive. We've gone from a business networking organisation to a community organisation, and our future is with the community. And I put it to you, we tax our members for being in Rotary, because who else charges their overhead costs to their volunteers? We're losing a battle to attract volunteers. Our membership numbers are telling us that. And if you look at doing some comparisons, I'll just pluck one out of the air here. For example, let's say a typical membership subscription to a Rotary club is around $300. Might be a bit more, might be a bit less, but that's around the mark. I compare that with being a member and a volunteer at Red Cross. So let's say 3 years in Rotary will cost you $300. They're repetitive $300 a year. The Red Cross, for that same time, be a volunteer and a member there, $75. You might say, we're not talking about apples and apples here. But my point is this: who else? What other volunteer organisations seek to do it the way that we do? And we have plenty of evidence to point to pricing differentials making a huge difference, not the least of which being the dramatic things that have been happening at Rocky Fitzroy, but we do have some other things to go with this too. But to you that evidence points to the fact that if we fundraise and invest in our club and members, and I've got a picture here from the Ballina-on-Richmond Satellite Club, some of my Rotary heroes at the moment because of the work they've been doing with the floods and the like. We have their presentation coming, which has been delayed by the floods, by the way. It was supposed to be on, I suppose, about 6 weeks ago. Colin Lee is going to tell us that his members and this satellite club is based in a lifestyle village, a group of people who many of us would say, forget them, they're Probus, they're for Probus. We are crazy doing that because there are people in that age group who want to give back to their community. They might be in Probus as well, but that's a social organisation. They want to do things like Cole's Satellite Club here loves supporting the main Ballina, their sponsor club, the main Ballina Club. They won't have a bar. The Satellite Club won't have a bar of chartering. They like being in our satellite. But the thing is, Cole said, if we charge these guys the standard go, say $300 a year, they'd be gone. They'd be voting with it. We fundraise to invest in them, to pay the cost of running the clubs. We're not subsidising their membership. Okay, get this. We are not subsidising their membership fee because it's up to the club to cover the cost of running the club. It's not automatically up to the members to pay for it. This one's coming up on the 17th of May. So if you're looking for an opportunity to grow your club by connecting with older Australians, I'd recommend this one to you because Cole Lee tells a magic story and there's some great learnings from this. So there's one group of people who we're going to lose if we try sticking with traditional pricing. There's another group coming up, the wonderful crew from Ryla in District 9650, I think it is, in northern New South Wales. Their webinar was delayed because of COVID. Our two presenters got COVID and obviously weren't in a condition to do the presentation. But they're going to be telling us about the challenges faced by younger people in terms of crossing this $300 a year hurdle. Okay, so we've got both ends of the scale, and put it to you then that we don't have to hit our members with the cost of the total cost of running the club. We can subsidise it. As Terry Daly has pointed out, the Australian Not-for-Profits Commission, Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, has expressed a view that not-for-profits perfectly reasonable for them. I think they quote a number of about 10% or in that order of things. That if you didn't do that, you're probably not running a viable operation. And given our ageing issues and our decline and member decline issues, it's time to look at that value, at this value we place on paying our own way, and maybe rethinking it. So, question here, at the start I said you don't have to do anything. One of the hardest parts of doing anything to change a culture or to modernise your club is the first step. Now, to me, the first step in making any change in a Rotary club is to imagine what it is you're going to do and then to have conversations with your members, because remember, your members own the club. So are you going to do anything? Now, if you've got an issue to do with modernising a club that you want help with, Membership Voice is there to help. We've got lots of great stories, and the library is growing all the time. And the thing about most of the stories is the lead presentation runs for about 20 minutes, so it could fit in with the guest speaker time for your club if you want to share something with your members. And the bit after that is about adding value and detail to the story. So at this stage, thank you for listening, and I'm happy. I'll hand back to host Elaine, and I'm happy to deal with any questions. I'll just stop the share now.
I always forget to unmute. Yes, so thanks very much, Kero. It was certainly raised a few questions and food for thought. As people are possibly thinking of some to put through in the chat to me, I've got one just to kick us off. You mentioned about microaggressions and then you talked about diversity, and obviously Rotary International has brought its diversity, equity and inclusion statement through. So as you get a club that becomes a little bit more diverse and a little bit less like me, how much potential do you think there is actually for an increase in microaggressions because it's not so much a club like me?
Absolutely. You're going to find it's almost inevitable that as you have different cultures, different behaviours, different preferences, with all the things that go with diversity coming into your club, it means that everyone has the opportunity to work out how to work together, to understand one another, because when they do that, everyone, well, maybe with the exception of some fringe characters, everyone generally gets to grow. And it's through that personal growth, and I know this is one of the things that I've benefited from being in Rotary, that with that exposure to a more diverse group of people, you learn stuff, you understand stuff. Sure, you're going to have differences. It's a matter of how you work through those things that's important. It's not about avoiding differences of opinion. It's about working through them, and that's where a good leadership comes in. It doesn't have to be dominant, powerful leadership. It can be the meekest, most humble person in the room can be a good leader just by asking the right questions and by encouraging people to talk to one another.
Great. Thanks very much for that. Okay, we've got some questions coming through here. To kick off first with Marilyn. So Marilyn, if you could unmute yourself, please. You had a question there which related to the charging that Kero talked about. Marilyn, are you still online?
Yes, I'm
Great.
I'm here, Elaine.
Excellent.
It just takes a bit because my internet's not the best at times. But
Right.
Kero, what I was led to believe was that we can subsidise our fees through different fundraisers and so forth. We don't have to stick to the regulated $300 a year. I know that our club has a cattle club, and as a cattle club, the cattle belong to the club. So we can sell a steer, which may raise $1,500, which in our small club covers our RI fees for the year. So to our members, we only charge a minimum fee for their work as volunteers in our community.
Yep, that's the way to do it. I mean, my personal belief is that we will always need a buy-in, because I do believe that having a buy-in from members is important. It's the level of that buy-in, and I think Terry Daly has put it so brilliantly. He has 18 members under 40, and I think he has 4 under 20. He said if we were talking to those guys about $300 a year and the assumptions that go with that, they'd be gone. I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but his point is that it's that affordability, that looking for alternatives, and some clubs have managed to get sponsorship, for example. But most clubs have income streams that can be used to cover the legitimate costs of running the club. This is not about covering people's meals, about paying for people's dinners and that sort of thing. That's an entirely separate issue. I'm really talking about that core hurdle. And I'm citing $300 a year. So, Marnie, what you've said there is just a case in point. Using your fundraising streams to pay the cost of running your clubs, so that you have a lot more potential for growth. So, thank you for that question, Marnie.
Thanks, Meryl. So the next question was from Bob Thompson. I think Bob had a question about research and fines. Oh,
Yeah, hi, Kero. Good to see you. Thanks for your presentation. Kero, what does your research show and tell us about the fine session, the typical fine session at the older style Rotary meetings?
Well, there's a body of evidence there. Like, as a general rule, clubs that have modernised have done things like replacing fine sessions with happy dollars, because fine sessions, I mean, there is the occasional fine session which is wonderfully funny and absolutely entertaining, but there are any number of reports of people who've been offended by things that have been said during fine session, fines masters who've gone over the top and maybe been a bit domineering. And so, as a general rule, when modernising a club, finding a better alternative to fine sessions is seen to be a good way to go. Yeah.
okay. I hope that answered your question, Bob. Next one, Lindsay, you had sort of an example of something that used to be done. You were asking about whether it was still being done.
Hi guys. Yeah, just rather probably take my second question if I could. Just examples
Sure.
of how to survey the community for what really is the key issues that people want to pick up of what kind of practices of clubs engaged in to get some feedback from the community.
The success stories that we've come across so far have seen clubs do use things like focus groups, where you get a group of community members in with a couple of club members, and you sit round and discuss issues that are topical in the community. Because the good thing about that is that if you do need clarification on something, that you can get it on the spot from those members. So, yeah, as a general rule, things like focus groups do work really well because they also expose your club to community, so the community gets to see your club in action. So you can also do things like online surveys, a Survey Monkey and that sort of thing. That can work well too, and in fact, you could use the two together. So best practice-wise, though, focus groups seem to be a good way to go.
For sure. Good.
Thanks, Lindsay. Ken Williams, I'll just come to you.
Thank you, Elaine. My question to Kero is, my understanding is, because we are definitely looking at this as an option for Applecross, as long as we advise the public when we're collecting funds that the funds will be partially or will be directed towards supporting club membership, the costs that belong to Rotary, and anyone who's volunteering within the club, then we've done our duty to cover off on the needs of open admission of what's going on. For example, we have lots of parking activities, as you know, and if we were to accommodate part of that each time and say 10% is going towards club membership support, the cost of membership, is that an okay way of looking at it? Kero?
I think it is. And in fact, one of the things that I've been thinking about that one, Ken, and one of the things that the past Governor Terry Daly recommended from his work on this is to actually add a line to your bylaws to say that you will use up to 50. He says up to 15%. Don't fix a number, otherwise your auditor's going to tell you you have to take it. And Terry's view is you only take what you need. You don't just grab money for the sake of putting it in the bank. But yes, that is a good way to go. The other thing I've been looking at for clubs that run fundraising events is to actually dedicate one every now and again and say, call it a festival of Rotary, if you like, and have things like RIPEN and acronym heaven here, RIPEN and RILA and Youth Exchange. People come along so you can actually use it, not just as a fundraiser, but as an opportunity to grow your club. And I wouldn't talk about subsidising membership. No. What you're actually doing is growing Rotary to better serve the community. So this money that you're raising is because remember, Rotary is an asset to the community. Your club is part of the movement and you're delivering value to the community. And by investing in your club, you're growing the value that comes back to the community. So, yeah, but what you're saying is absolutely right, Ken. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that, Ken. Deb Greenwood, you had a question from you there.
Yes, I think it's been answered by many people, and thank you very much for all these wonderful, wonderful ideas. It's just that we've got a more elderly club. People are really relying on their super funds or whatever savings they've got, and they can't afford $300 a year, and so they're leaving.
No. Yep.
So what you've said so far has really helped us, and we'll have a think about that and see if we can then look at our fundraising to go towards growing our club and helping with those fees. So thank you for all these ideas.
No worries, Deb. Anytime. Happy to help.
Thanks, Deb. In fact, in the chat as well, Adrian Roach had put something in about doing something like a wine drive it was obviously like a club event where it's just the funds are around your friends and family maybe, and it's going towards club OPEX. Adrian, I don't know if you want to say anything more to that comment.
No, just to say that I think it's important that members do pay something to belong to the organisation. We do get a great amount of value and joy out of it, as well as the insurance. And the insurance is not cheap, the Rotary insurance. So, but I think to subsidise is a good way to put it. And if you can raise funds through having a wine drive, everybody knows somebody who likes a good glass of wine or two. And it's amazing what can happen if you get the sponsorship or the support of a local winery. What we do is we buy clean skins, good quality clean skins, and we put our own Rotary label on it. And then we have a wine appreciation night where we invite our friends and family and members to come and taste them, and then take orders for the cartons. And this gives us quite a lot of money to be able to help run our club. So that's one of the things we can do.
Thanks, Adrian. Derek King.
Hi, thanks, Elaine. Just a plug for Membership Voice. Go back 2 weeks ago and have a look at past District Governor Terry's talk at Campbelltown when we actually covered this. So there were 12 of us there. There are 46 of you here today. So that's 34 of you have got some homework to do. Okay. One thing that was, and Terry brought it up, and I've talked to Nick Wood, who's our district governor, you need to look at the charity rules where you live. Okay, different states, and New Zealand's rules are quite a lot tighter than what they are in Australia. But the one thing we would suggest, the wine drive's a great idea. The other one was you might get a Rotary person who wants to get their house painted or a room done or whatever, and those say, here's $2,000 if you guys can come around and do that. And that money then just gets paid to the club, like they're paying a contractor, and you use that money towards fees and dues, etc. So that's one way around it. But just check your charity rules for your state, or in our case, our country, because they are different as to whether or not you can take funds from something where somebody thinks you're fundraising, even if you have got a sign. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Derek. Johnny, you've got a slightly different question. Can we come to you?
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. And I see my screen settled down a little bit. I thought I was going to have to leave and come back in, but it settled down. I've got District Assembly, Kero, this weekend, and of course, District Governor-elect Kevin Forgerson and 9930's real hot on membership retention, because he reckons just as many people are going out the back door that are coming in the front door. So what I wanted to ask was, is there any stats or with either RI or through your membership voice, just as to once we introduce people to learning, because most of us that have been onto the Learning Centre realise the value of the Learning Centre, but have we got any stats to use from the point of trying to, like, for example, on Saturday when I've got to do a membership breakout session to stimulate some of these members to get onto the Learning Centre and start learning?
Well, only the evidence-based best practice from these clubs. And I think whilst it's not a huge sample, because it is recurrent, because we are seeing it, because we're seeing it in a number of the clubs that we've involved with Membership Voice, whose stories we put on Membership Voice, that there is this recurrent theme that getting members involved in learning about Rotary and able to understand Rotary and get more benefit out of Rotary, that they're staying longer. So no quotable stat, if you like, other than a whole lot of of mentions in our best practice stories. So it's a pretty compelling argument. Yeah.
Does that cover your question, Johnny?
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Kero.
Great. So there's certainly in the chat area, if people are able to open that and look at, there's some good information coming through there as well, particularly for the Australians from Adrian. Thank you very much for that. So, Kero, here's another sort of thought. Do you think that maybe as Rotarians we're just too damn polite and PC to actually grow our clubs?
Well, to a point, I do, because we've encouraged people before to get out there and share their stories, and there's a certain reluctance, a certain reticence about that. Now, okay, as far as our members are concerned, let's leave that for a moment. In my view, the service above self aspect of being a leader in Rotary, a club president or a project leader or something, is about looking after your members. So it goes with the job. If you're the boss, if you like, for want of a better term, it goes with the job to help people feel good about doing that. That is your service. So I think we've got to when people take up leadership roles, it's incumbent on them, if they want their club to succeed, it's incumbent on them to, in their own way, share these stories and express their pride in their teams. Because if you do that, wonderful things happen.
Okay. Ken, back to you.
Okay, this one's a little bit of a different one, Kero. You might have noted I put a bit of an entry into the most recent 9465 DG's newsletter.
Yes.
Looking at some of the matters that we're looking at in our Zone 1, which is really sharing the load between the 4 clubs. Mm-hmm. So that in the city of Melville, there's 4 Rotary clubs, and we're sort of trying to address that and say, look, we all need to work on this together. There's 4 different meeting times, 4 different venues, 4 different sets of principles at each club. Let's let the world have a look at this and say, look, we're open for membership. Make a decision. The other side of that was that we're quite keen to support groups who want to join in with us in projects. So Applecross, for example, was prepared to put some money up to support a project at the local level for a group that might have a community project that we can support. We go to the City of Melbourne and say, look, get us some more money and we'll make this one really work. Within it, I think there's an expanded opportunity there. Comments, please.
Yes. The thing I would add to that, the caution, and it gets back to what I said about Ballina on Richmond. Ballina on Richmond could have just, when they heard about this family violence thing, when they heard about the family violence thing, they could have just sent a cheque, to use the old-fashioned term. And that would have probably not benefited them at all. But by getting involved hands-on, by being seen to be advocates for the elimination of domestic violence and putting a bit of money into it too, the community came and met them on that. Their community recognised that was value, and as a result, they were open to joining. So my recommendation would be to go beyond just putting money into it, to get involved, get hands-on, and you'll find that people will come out. If people see that you're interested in what they're doing and that you're getting out there doing it with them, you might well find that some will come and join Rotary, providing you talk to them about volunteering with us and not come and join my club. Talk about we need your help with this volunteering. That is much more attractive than do you want to join Rotary? Because it's been seen to work.
I appreciate it. And we did say we work with you. It's not about joining Rotary, but I do take on the point that if you've got something that is of value to the community, and for them it was obviously domestic violence and domestic abuse, they picked up on it and they did something when they got the police involved. If we can find that sort of a project and use that as the introduction to come and work with us, then I think that's a very good concept. So thank you for that idea. Appreciate it.
No worries. No worries, Ken. Happy to continue the conversation sometime if you like. No worries.
Thank you. I'll take you up on it.
So, Kero, in the process of your talking, you mentioned a satellite club, and we've got a question from Dean Fuller. Dean, if
I
you'd
am.
like to present your question.
Oh, just a simple question here, Kero. Does it or should it cost less for somebody to be a member of a satellite club?
Well, as a general rule, I mean, it can cost less if the because the club has. I mean, it might create some issues within the broader club because the satellite is part of the bigger club. But in theory, there's no reason why you couldn't have a separate or a different membership subscription. I don't know that it's ever been done, but there should be no reason why you can't do it, because it is a separate sub entity within that bigger club. But as I say, there would be issues involved in doing that, obviously within the club.
Actually, I'll just add to that, Kero, because we run a couple of satellites in our district, and usually there are different costing or price because they're often aimed at a younger group, and they tend to run differently. They tend to run a little bit more on the smell of an oily rag, so to speak. So that it can happen, Dean. It's really very much about the conversation and the collaboration with the parent or sponsoring club about how they want to manage perhaps some of those per member type fees that might come through from district.
Elaine,
yes,
to add to that, and because your club runs a bunch of satellites, are those younger members in the satellite clubs full Rotarians on the RI, like club runner? Did they? Is everything?
They're full. They're listed on the RI database and as members on My Rotary, and they're full Rotarians, because when you have a satellite club, it actually gets listed under the parent club. All the members are listed as active members under the parent sponsoring club. So that's where they sit.
So then is the fee, because you said they have a lower fee, is the difference made up by the club and its fundraising, or is there no difference because it's not incurred by RI?
So in fact, in most of our clubs that have satellites, they are supporting them. They support them for usually, in most cases, for a couple of years on a gradated scale, so that the satellite club members can get themselves organised as to how they're operating. But I'd say that in the majority of those satellite club scenarios, they're not actually running any sort of meals. They're meeting at people's places, and they might be sort of bringing pizza or bringing something. So there's none of that sort of cost. And the club has decided to support them for a couple of years on any of the district cost, but they're meeting their RI fees.
Because the minimum RI fees, I understand, is around about $300, give or take. And if the satellite club members are getting charged less than that, say they're getting charged $100 per year, is that $200 still incurred for them? That difference of $200, is it still incurred by RI? And if so, does your club then fundraise to cover it, or is it not incurred because they are part of a satellite club?
No, it's still an RI fee. Well, from a New Zealand point of view, New Zealand exchange rate, I've done the breakdown, and I've worked out that what I would call the RI part of the cost of being a Rotarian is it's actually less than 300. I think it was about 180, actually 180 or 200. Everything else was club operating expenses and district fees. And
Yeah, can I just come in there? I'm still sort of hearing a bit of an assumption that, and I want to say something about the RI and district things. Their input costs to the club based on the number of members in the club. Okay, so it's a club expense. It is not a bill to a member. The club is the one that determines the price to the member. So we've just got to be careful with the assumption that because RI charges the club something, that the member has to be hit for the full impact of that. they don't. So just need to sort of disconnect those two things.
Thanks, Kero. Adrian, I'll just come to you for a moment.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember what I was going to say now because I was listening to what Kero had to say. The fees, as I said, are set by RI and the district, and then the club, of course, can put what they want on it, but it's up to the clubs to set the fees, and of course, there's a lot of different ways to pay it. So there's not much we can do about it. That's what I was going to say. We keep banging on about the fees being $200 or $300. That's not where the majority of money a Rotarian spends in becoming a Rotarian. How much do you spend on dinner, breakfast, drinks, jolly jokers or raffle tickets or whatever? It's all those other additional costs. So the best way to reduce the price for your members is to make sure all those things are optional. So, for example, when you have a meeting, people aren't obliged to have the $20 or $30 a head meal. They can have a glass of water or whatever they choose, but you make it flexible so people can afford to do what they can do.
Absolutely agree there, Adrian. But one of the things that we've tended to do over the years is to run the picket fence versus the wall argument, which is that we have this wall made up of, say, $2,000 worth of dinner fees, and it's only a picket fence of $300 a year to actually be a member. And we've done a lot to create gateways in the wall, but we've ignored the picket fence, and we're getting a lot of feedback from people that the picket fence is one of the reasons why they can't afford to be in the organisation anymore. So it does make a difference. I agree with you. The meal thing has to be addressed as well, but that $300 picket fence is still a big issue.
That's why if you can raise some funds to help subsidise the members, that's great. But yeah, I still believe that the fees is the smallest part of my concern. I've made more money to the Rotary Foundation to having meals than that.
And actually, that's it. Thank you for that, Aid. You reminded me of something else, that one of the spin-off benefits that can potentially come from this, if we do restructure this so that the annual subscription is, say reduced by that, is it opens the opportunity for those who are happy to continue to make that $300 to actually contribute more to Rorke's, to the foundation. And so it could actually open, some new fundraising pathways for Rorke's and foundation.
Thanks, Adrian. So now, Kero, I think we just seem to have to be our last one. Marilyn has a thought that she'd like to share with you on learning.
Right.
Yes, what I was thinking, we're having our first Global Teachers Teams meeting tomorrow night. So anybody that wants to get on board, please email me in the next 24 hours and I'll include you in our chat in District 9560. But when you were talking about the Learning Centre, and that was going to be one of my things, that the teachers would like to go to the Learning Centre, because as we all know, in business and profession these days, everybody is wanting more certificates for more things, and more certificates and the more accolades you've got, the higher your promotion. So what I was thinking was it might even actually work in reverse. The teachers might be able to help us with the Learning Centre, so that we're actually promoting extra skills to the wider Rotarian community by the Global Teachers Club, which we're trying to set up. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a brilliant idea. I love it, and I think the whole idea of the Global Teachers is a fantastic idea. Building on the success that we've already experienced with the Nurses Global Club, I think it's just wonderful. Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's excellent. We've obviously there's a lot of discussion that can be had around this, and there was a lot of discussion going on, which is great. But Kero, of course, the time has come for that question which you ask everybody else. Kero O'Shea, why are you in Rotary?
I thought I'd managed to escape that one. I'm in Rotary I was kind of an accidental Rotarian because I always said for years that I wasn't going to join because I used to be an Apex. I wasn't going to join an organisation which met every week. And my wife came in about 13 years ago and said, well, I found one that meets once a month. I knew what she was talking about. How does that sound? Because my wife was already in Rotary. And so I went along, and interesting organisation, the Rotary Club of New York and Western Australia, and got involved. And I really came to appreciate the value that Rotary adds in terms of things like youth projects, particularly for disadvantaged young people. And looking at that and looking at the work we did, at our disaster relief things and the wonderful people you get to work with, it just grew on me. I got to a stage where I was fulfilled by it all, enjoying what I was doing, and hey, I'm still here.
That's great. So I'd like everybody, please, if you could all unmute, and we will give a rounding series of applause to Kero for having this discussion tonight. Thank you very much, Kero.
Well done, Kero.
Yeah, Kero.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kero.
It's been fun.
So we actually have come to, slightly over, but thanks for hanging in there with us. And I'd just like to wish everyone, from here in New Zealand, it's 10 o'clock at night. So Pamaria, have a good evening, sweet dreams. And we'll catch you all at the next Membership Voice webinar.
Thank you for great hosting, Elaine. Thank you.
Okay. See you.
Nice work.
Elaine, could you hang around for a moment,
Yes.
please? This is what I usually say to the presenter, but I had to ask my question.
Au revoir.
Thanks, everyone. It's been great.
Good night.
Yeah.